Well, ChatGPT said my agency's worth like 10 times revenue.
The question often gets asked is like, I got an offer for my agency. It's, 2x revenue. Is that a good number? I can only imagine like when people come to you with these similar types of questions, is that one of those most maddening things that you might come across in your day to day?
Sometimes I think I'm going mad.
So one of our guys on our team is in those groups, and he said just the other day, somebody posted and said, well, ChatGPT said my agency's worth like 10 times revenue.
Oh boy. Oh boy.
Based on what?
Maybe Chat will buy your agency.
Yeah, I don't think Chat's got a checkbook. Welcome to the podcast dedicated to real estate, insurance, and building your business. Join us as we take you along our own business building journeys with additional wisdom from our network of local and national experts. Welcome to Bricks and Risk.
This episode is brought to you by Property Management Redefined. PMR is not just managing properties, they're creating partnerships that build long-term success for property owners. John and his team can be reached at manage@gopmr.com or by phone 267-753-6005. Tim?
Yes, Sean.
Who's a good client for PMR?
Property Management Redefined is looking for property owners who value three things: accountability, reliability, and a results-driven approach. We want to maximize returns, but still provide client and tenant satisfaction.
There's a lot of property managers out there.
Yes, there are.
What does PMR do really well?
Biggest thing is they're seamless and they're worry-free. So with that approach in mind, it allows the property owner to put their trust in PMR and know that the results will be there. The other thing I think a property owner is really going to value, because they do it so well, is that they have a local expert team, boots on the ground, managing your properties and your tenants' expectations every day so that you feel good about your investments.
We have millions of listeners out there.
Tens of millions.
If they want more information, how do they find PMR?
Right here, guys. Reach out to John Sachs and his team at Property Management Redefined. We'll take good care of you. Hey, everyone. Welcome to another episode of Bricks and Risk. I'm Tim Garrity.
And I'm Sean Mooney.
Today, Sean, we have a Florida boy from Melbourne, Florida. We have Mike Mensch, CEO and founder of Agency Brokerage. How you doing today, Mike?
Doing great.
Welcome in. Thanks for joining us, Mike.
Yeah, thanks for coming here. All right. So, Mike is the CEO and a founding partner of Agency Brokerage Consultants. After almost 20 years, Agency Brokerage has completed over 3,000 formal agency valuations and over 500 agency M&A transactions. Mike is a certified business intermediary and a certified merger and acquisition master intermediary. We're going to have to get into those. What started out as a career in chemical engineering switched to M&A advisory nearly 20 years ago. Mike has been married for 25 years and is also a father of 3. In his spare time, he's a part-time philosopher and aspiring writer. So, my first question, how do you go from chemical engineering to insurance agency valuations?
You have two polar opposite parents.
That's funny.
That's the story. My dad was a physicist. My mom was in real estate and then got into M&A at the end of her career. So started off following my dad and then realized I didn't really want to be a scientist and engineer, and shifted and followed my mom. But along the way, people were telling me, like, you don't really seem like an engineer. You got a little bit too much personality. So
They were
Don't
right.
let that go to waste, Mike. You got
there are
to use it.
indicators.
All right, what kind of real estate did your mom do?
She ran, this is going all the way back in the 80s. She ran offices up near you guys in Bucks County. She ran a chain of offices, and then we moved to Florida, and she ran some real estate offices, got into mortgage business, and then kind of at the end of her career got into M&A and business brokerage.
Very cool.
Were they? Was your dad forcing you at any time to like go the way of science and engineering?
He's like, pick up that Bunsen burner right now.
Yeah.
No, it's actually my mom thought it'd be better.
Oh, really? Go do that. You don't want to do this. Go do that.
Yeah, go work for somebody.
Right.
Yeah.
All right, so let's talk a little bit about what agency valuation is and like why a brokerage owner would consider talking to anyone about it. Like, what is it exactly?
What we're talking about is the market value of an insurance agency. So it's an asset that a business owner owns. You should have a good idea of what drives value in it. And as you're scaling it, you should understand what's going to drive more value. That way you're kind of planning out, you don't want to, like any asset, you've got to understand its value and you want to increase its value over time. So that's the main thing. We go through, we do evaluation, we talk to them about where they are today and what they can do to increase the value. A lot of people we work with, it's not like one and done. We're talking to them over the course of years and trying to give them feedback and direction.
Okay. Well, my co-host to the right of me, he owns an agency. What advice would you give to Mr. Mooney if you're like, hey, or what questions would you ask? What kind of advice would you give? I'm going to put you on the spot here, Mike. So.
You would need, hold on, before there, I think you would need a colonoscopy before you got into, like, how do you advise someone? But maybe I'll let Mike just pick up on that.
Just let him pick up on that.
Yeah, I mean, so I'll start first with what we look at. We get a couple of years of financials. We get a breakout of the book of business. So we're looking at the quality of the book of business, looking at the growth rate, the profitability. That's kind of the high level. From what drives value, obviously size, profit drives value, quality of the book of business and clients you have. The one of the webinars that I do talks about as you're scaling it, like the foundations of what you should be building. So one is strategy, one is the systems in the operation, one is the culture in your office, and the third one is the financials. Because one of the biggest issues we find is agency principals are great salespeople, but when you get under the hood, their data is a mess. And like if you're going to get through a sale of the business, you got to be able to prove out your numbers. And so people often neglect like financials is probably one big area. And then even thinking about culture, like what you're trying to build, if you're really trying to scale it large, you have to invest in developing the culture. And that's another area that gets under worked on, I guess.
Well, that's why they hire you, Mike. We go out and we get the sales in the door, and then we don't really have the best handle on numbers and things like that. So that's why we come to you and you say,
right,
you got to do this, you got to do that, you got to do that. Position ourselves for the sale, right?
Yeah. I mean, when you're running a business, it's like, do we have enough money to pay the bills? Are we making profit? And I get it. It's like, but when you go through an actual transaction, a lot of these big buyers, you got to prove out all your production. You got to prove out your book of business. And we've got clients that are, 10 million plus in revenue that have really bad data, really bad financials.
Wow.
Yeah. And it's like, you got the strategy, you got the systems, that's all working great. That's why you're getting that large. Now you got to work on the other foundations to make sure that like you can track what you're doing and somebody can see, all the production and see who's producing and everything like that.
All right. So you've seen thousands of these. What would you say, like, if you had to give like a sweet spot for like an insurance, brokerage like Sean's here? Is there like a size of premium, like book of business is very common when people start to consider, hey, I've been doing this for a while, I've built it up, maybe it's time for an exit at some point. Like what's common in your business?
That's always driven by the individual. Like when it's time for people. That's why, when we work with clients, there's like no pressure because we know maybe you're not ready today, maybe it takes 10 years before you're ready to pull the trigger. And so obviously retirement's a big factor for a lot of our clients, but life happens and, people burn out or they get tired of doing something or they want to, they get sick even. So what motivates people is different. Over the last couple of years, the valuations have been really high and that's motivating people because they see what goes up must come down eventually, right? So now's a good time to cash in. But it's different for everybody, really.
Gotcha.
Mike, there's
at any size, there's buyers for an agency.
Mike, there's we see it I see it online with different like a Facebook group or something, agent group that you see online. And the question often gets asked is like, I got an offer for my agency. It's, 2x revenue. Is that a good number? I can only imagine like when people come to you with these similar types of questions, is that one of those most maddening things that you might come across in your day to day?
I think so one of our guys on our team is in those groups, and he said just the other day, somebody posted and said, well, ChatGPT said my agency's worth like 10 times revenue.
Oh boy.
Well,
Oh boy.
based on what?
Maybe Chat will buy your agency.
Yeah, I don't think Chat's got a checkbook.
Yeah.
But okay, so like to kind of like peel back the onion on that, right?
Yeah.
Like can you talk us through that as an example, and why this agency might get more than this agency, or what kind of the driving factors when it comes to this sale? And on top of that, what maybe you've seen recently in terms of recent sales and what those numbers might have been.
Yeah. So profit is number one factor, like profitability, what we call pro forma EBITDA. Growth rate's important. You're in the insurance industry. We've been riding a hard market, as they call, where premiums keep going up. Now that's softening over the last 12 months. So everybody's really looking at, are you adding policy count versus just riding out the premium growth? So profitability, growth rate, and then underneath that, it's the composition of the book of business. Is it with what we call A-rated carriers, national carriers that pay profit sharing? What's the nature of the clients? You have good retention of clients, because some types of business, like let's say on the commercial side, trucking, the retention's lower than other lines of business, and then quality of staff. So starts first with profitability, growth rate, size, and then then you dive down into the like what's the composition of the book and the team, and a lot of that drives like what type of buyers would be interested.
But when you get specifically with profitability, I guess that my question on profitability is that one of the more important key indicators? Because in my mind, profitability for this agency might not be the same if you take that agency and move it over here as a piece of this larger agency. Can you maybe talk about that a little bit?
Sure. So if in one case you're buying a book of business, right? If you're stripping it out, getting rid of the brand, merging the book,
Right.
So you're buying a book of business basically, which is it's really a wasting asset. You're buying the customers that exist, but you may not be buying the operating systems and whatever's driving. Hopefully there's revenue growth and customer growth and all that. And so it's really a wasting asset. So in that situation, you should be aware of like customer retention rate and what are you going to get from that book of business? What's it going to look like in 5 years? The deals we're mainly working on are somebody's buying the enterprise on as a going concern basis. So they're taking it over, keeping the staff, keeping whatever marketing systems. And so it's different because you're maintaining hopefully growth engine too, and not just buying a customer list really.
Okay.
And is the differentiation between the two a lot in those scenarios, or just dependent upon the scenario?
Yeah, oftentimes, once you get to a certain size, and then buyers stop looking at it as just a book of business.
Yeah.
Maybe let's say $1 million of revenue or somewhere around there. Now they're going to buy it as a standalone business. Yeah, they'll rebrand and integrate it to their company, but you got standalone office systems, employees, and everything. But if it's, let's say, 500,000 or less in revenue, oftentimes somebody's buying the book and just merging it into existing office. Maybe taking some staff with them. But again, one of the main things is, are you acquiring a growth engine, or are you just buying a customer list, really?
So when you say revenue, just because I'm not an insurance guy, but I've learned a lot about insurance by hanging out with this guy very frequently and talking about business every couple of weeks. When you're talking about revenue, you're not talking about the size of the premium. You're talking about what the brokerage, what the office brought in from that premium. That's their revenue.
Commissions.
And then the commissions, let's call it.
Yep.
And then once you have that revenue / commissions, then you obviously have to subtract all the expenses, your office, your labor, your marketing, whatever, your lunch, all the things, subtract all that off. And then that's going to give you the profit. And that's basically, you're looking at those major things first before you look at like the brand or the culture or like, am I correct in saying that?
Correct. Yeah. So the first thing we're diving into is creating what we call a pro forma. So we're looking at the financials.
It's all numbers.
Yeah, it's all numbers based. Every small business owner's like trying to minimize taxable income. So we're backing out all the personal stuff. And usually you got to put in the, business owners are usually owner operators, right? So we have to put in a market compensation for the owner. And then that net number we call like a pro forma EBITDA. And that's what the valuation is based off of.
Okay. Do you look at, all right, so I'll geek out a little bit more here.
Keep going.
Do you look at the captive brokerages as well as like the captive exclusive, let's call it, versus independent, or both, or one? Like the way I'm picturing it in my mind, I'm thinking if I'm independent, I'm probably talking to more someone like you, because I don't have a big brother. I don't have a big parent company. Like it's my mom and pop business, let's call it. So I need an expert, a consultant in the industry who can look at my mom and pop business. Do the exclusive captive people go to their parent company, like a State Farm, an Allstate, whoever, to value their firm and then sell it to another State Farm, Allstate, whoever?
So State Farm is totally captive. They're company owned. And so I'm sure they do have internal consulting, like what's the best way to run your State Farm office, but they can't sell their book of business. Allstate is more, it's almost like a franchise where Allstate sets rules and procedures and all that. And they'll give them training, but you can sell your financial interest in your Allstate agency. The difference is we're dealing on the independent side in a world of strategic buyers, which is larger firms that are doing roll-ups and adding scale. In like an Allstate world, Allstate controls who can buy it, and they usually want somebody that's going to be an owner operator. Mostly, that's what they're trying to get, is somebody in there that's going to sell policies, sell life insurance, and all that. So they're controlling the sale process because they get to pick and choose who's allowed to buy it, and most of the time they're not. They're trying to keep existing Allstate agents from just acquiring a whole bunch of offices and running like a conglomerate. So it's a different sale process because in the independent world, nobody's really controlling it, meaning like you don't have a parent company that says yes or no.
Right.
And the buyers that we're dealing with are large, strategic capital-backed buyers. On the Allstate side, we call them like a financial buyer, somebody that's buying a job. You got to go get bank financing, that sort of thing. So it's two different processes, two different worlds.
Interesting.
Yeah, you don't have that same, it's similar to like Erie. So sometimes you have to go to the parent company to get approval of the buyer. Like you can't just sell that to anyone. So there is, a hands-on approach when it comes to the sales for those versus being totally independent like me, where I could sell it tomorrow and it doesn't matter who I sell it to. Who the buyer is. So a little different.
Interesting. One other thing I noticed on your website I thought was super interesting. So it says you evaluate agencies. So it's like we're talking about right now, like a valuation, understanding what something is worth, helping the owner understand what it's worth, but that you also optimize agencies. Can you like explain like that part of your business? Like what did you mean by optimize?
Yep. So we added consulting services to our menu of items that we do for agencies. And the reason is a couple of years back, I looked at like, what are the recurring issues we keep seeing with agencies? And one is what I talked about, which is they've just got really bad financial data. They're not using their management system correctly, or their accountant doesn't understand their financials. So their financials are a mess. And so the optimize is we offer a fractional CFO consulting service where we'll plug in with them and kind of look at where they are, set a budget for them, work with them monthly. One of our guys does that. He works monthly with clients, helping them optimize their expenses, helping them set goals and kind of clean up all their financials. So that's what it means. It's, it's really like exit planning, almost like, well, there's different scenarios. Exit planning is if you need to optimize your agency before you go through a transaction.
Okay.
And then sometimes he's getting in situations where it's like turnaround, where their margin is really low. The agency's operating at a really low margin for whatever reason, and he's trying to help them turn it around and clean things up and change compensation plans or whatever has to be done.
Hey everyone, this is Tim, your favorite Bricks and Risk co-host. But don't tell Sean. I hope you're enjoying this episode, and I'll get right back to it in a moment. Our audience grows through word of mouth, so if you would please take a moment of your time and give us a review on the platform you're on, that would be fantastic. Please also help spread the B&R word by sharing your favorite episode with a friend. We greatly appreciate your time and trust. Now, back to the show.
And I guess you've seen that a lot. Like you've seen sellers come to you and say, hey, Mike, I want to sell my agency. And they have this expectation that I can sell for this because the guy down the street sold his agency for this. So that means I'm going to get this, right? So I think it's an important piece where an agency owner might come to you and say, what is my agency worth? And you, going through all these deals and transactions, have a better than most understanding of what the real value is, can shine some light on it in terms of what that value is. And then it sounds like to me, you can implement the different ways of getting the most for their agency, right? So they're not leaving meat on the bone
right
when it's time to go sell their agency.
Yeah, let me address that two ways. So in terms of what it's worth, we do the valuation. We tell them what it's worth today. Our ability to help a client achieve the highest value is through our process of taking them to market and helping to pitch their agency to different buyers. But part of the valuation is looking at how ready are they to get through a transaction, and that's one area that agencies they take for granted. Like they think, whatever revenue, whatever profit, that makes me worth X. But the reality is you got to prove your revenue. You got to prove all your customer base. If you have producer relationships and those contracts are not written, or you've got legal documents that have to be shored up, because there's a lot of agencies that they take producers and they have different arrangements with them. Sometimes they don't have written agreements. Sometimes their agreement doesn't define who owns the accounts. Sometimes the producer commission splits are not standardized. But if they sell to a big acquirer, they're going to have to change that producer comp, right? So there's often a lot of things that need to be cleaned up before you can even get through a transaction. And that's one area that I think everybody takes for granted, because it's not easy. Like, if you've got a handful of producers and you don't have agreements with them, or they're at some unusual compensation rate, to sell to a national firm that's going to pay you top dollar, and they're going to have to put everybody on a standardized plan. And so you're going to have to address it sooner or later, and you're better to just take care of it early than like get to the altar on a deal and go to all your producers like you're trying to close in 2 weeks and be like, okay, guys, I got a new plan for you. Sign right here, because that may not go well.
Dude, that's what's interesting about that. I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to make an analogy here, because I always have analogies on this show for like make things more relatable, at least to people in my world, because I'm not in insurance, I'm in real estate. And your mom would appreciate this. So there are people, someone's been living in their house for like 30, 40 years, and they're like, hey, Tim, I want to sell it. Okay, so I schedule the appointment, I go and I look at their house. And then I take a tour of their home, as I always do. We sit down at the kitchen table, let's say, and be like, okay, what do you think your house is worth? It's a great question to ask. One, I want to take their temperature. I want to understand what they really think this asset, because that's what it is worth. And a lot of times they'll do what you guys were just talking about. Oh, my neighbor down the street, 2 blocks down, they got this. It's like, yeah, but their kitchen was from 2021 and yours is from 1992. So like those are apples and oranges. And then you're going through all this stuff with them, and there are always two options. You can just do the basics. Like you can just clean up your house. I'll have photos taken. I'll put a sign in the yard, and we'll sell it the way it is. Or you could paint, you could fix, you could declutter, you could update. You know, there's lots of, you could rip the carpet out and do hardwood. Like I was trying to keep things to a minimum. But what's interesting about what you just said, like the optimization approach, you're going and saying, look, you have an asset, but it's only shining in this kind of light. It's not the best light. Like most people won't be highly attracted to your business as it stands today. But if you do these things, if you update the website, you know, if you clean up your numbers, like if your brand was, whatever it is, whatever they're trying to do to make their asset shine in the best light, well, someone's probably going to be more inclined to pay more for it than they would when you originally saw it. So do you do like a lot of consulting on that end of like telling them these are some things that you can do to make it shine in its best light, let's say?
That's what we try to do. But sometimes they listen. Sometimes they're like, okay, whatever. We just want to sell.
Yeah, I'm done.
I'm done. Yeah. You guys, you guys read that one article that I wrote where I made that comparison. Yeah.
Yep.
I mean, that's like, if you put your house on the market and you haven't fixed everything up, you're probably going to get beat down when the inspection comes back. And like, you're just setting yourself up for that type of renegotiation. And it's the same thing when you're selling a business. If you don't have good data where you can prove out your numbers, or you don't have good agreements, or whatever it is, if you haven't prepared for the process, you're setting yourself up to get beat down when you get into it.
Well, in a lot of those instances, too, is one of my famous lines that I use is you don't know what you don't know, right?
I say that all the time.
It's like if you're an agency owner, and I think that's why people need to work with a professional, right? And I think I might have mentioned this before, is that in part of that article that you kind of mapped out for everyone, you don't know what you don't know in the vein of maybe you could get more, right? You know, there's so many things that if you didn't work with a professional who's done hundreds or thousands of transactions, who's seen everything, you're not going to know, on the front end, like what you're leaving on the table. You actually don't know what a good deal for your agency would be. And there's also, as you've seen, a lot of ways to draw up a purchase, right? Mm-hmm. And I had made mention this to you, is that someone that I was talking to recently in terms of an agency owner had a 5-year buyout on the back end or some sort of...
Yeah, explain that. So I don't think we've ever gone over this on the show.
So and I'll let Mike actually talk about this, but the point that I was saying and talking about this specific scenario was, I think that, and I didn't get the formal terms of the purchase, but it was probably, in my guess, is a large number up front for the agency. So they agree to a
lump sum here.
They agree to a number of the agency. I say, okay, we're going to buy it for this. And there's a contingency part of it on the back end for 5 years. And that could be dependent upon performance of the book.
Oh, wow.
That could be...
it's like an NFL player.
Yeah, sort of.
Yeah. You do this, you do that, you get a bonus.
So I'll let Mike talk about that in terms of how these deals are so wildly different. And if you're not working with someone that's seen them all, you really don't know what a good deal might be or might not be.
Yeah.
Correct. Yes, you don't know you don't know what's out there, what it might be. But even beyond that, like we get clients that get offers from buyers direct, and they're like, they just look at the number, right? And they're like, hey, this is like whatever, 20, 30 times my EBITDA.
Yeah.
And it sounds insane because it's like 2 to 3 times what it should be worth.
Yeah.
Right.
And then I get the offer. I'm like, okay, it's like 6 times up front And if you grow and they grow, and like all, if 10
Yeah.
years from now, it's going to be, you may get that on the back end. And so it's, yes, you don't know unless you go to market. Like same thing in real estate, unless you go out there and see what offers are out there, you won't ever have a good idea of what it's worth.
Yep.
But two is like, if you don't understand that how to digest an offer that's put in front of you and break it down and read it, then that's very dangerous. Because again, like we got clients that they'll get these offers that are crazy. And I break it down. I'm like, you're getting like 6 times up front. That's terrible. And like the rest of it is if this, then that, like pie in the sky projections, and that probably never going to happen. Um, so I see that a lot. But it's kind of like the old adage, you name the price, I'll set the terms. Like,
Yeah.
oh, you want $1 million, I'll pay you over, 30 years.
Well, I was just thinking in my head was you go to buy a car and you're like, how much do you want to pay a month? And we'll
Right.
get you into that monthly payment, and who knows like what you need up front and what, is that a 5-year loan?
What the
Is
terms
that a 10-year loan? Like there's so many things on the back end that you might not be aware of that could make this what seems like a really good deal up front because of that 30 EBITDA, but it's an absolutely terrible deal by looking at all the fine print.
Right. Yeah. Yeah. It sounds like it's, astronomical, but when you break it down, it's actually below market, what you're really getting.
So is it true then when they do say if it's too good to be true, it is? In most
That's what
cases?
my mom always said.
You're right.
Yeah.
Oh, that's awesome. All right. So a tip that you gave for the bricks and riskers was think about what you're building. Go a little bit deeper on that tip. Why that tip?
So that goes back to what I call the 4 pillars of like thinking through what's the strategy? Like, who is your ideal client? How are you going to attract, retain, and find them? Who's your ideal employee? How are you going to attract and retain them?
Yeah.
What are the systems you have to build to be able to continue to scale it? What's the culture you need to develop to build build the business that you want to see in 10, 20 years? And then what are the financial considerations you have to take into effect, like running it? A lot of business owners run it like it's their personal bank account, right? Whatever cash flow comes in, I take out. Well, if you're trying to build a much larger business, you got to treat it like a separate, like you're a steward of the company, right? And your objective is to reinvest the capital to scale the business. And so it's thinking long term, where do you want to be, and then making sure you're doing all the things you have to do to get to that long term goal. And one of the other things I talk about too is like a person as a business owner, you have to evolve as the business evolves. Like we all generally start off in sales. Well, then, you get to a certain size, now you got to manage people, and then you got to manage marketing and processes and all that. And you have to continually evolve, because if you don't evolve, then the business is just going to get stuck and it's going to hit a ceiling, and you're not going to be able to break through until you yourself evolve and be able to shift your focus from where you were to where you need to put your attention.
You've been building your business for about 20 years.
Correct.
Does this cross your own mind just for agency brokerage, like thinking about like what am I doing, like the optimization, like things like that? Like how often do you think about this kind of stuff, like for your own business and where you're going with that?
Yeah, every day.
Well, I think you see it in reverse, Mike, is like what value can you bring to your clients? And I think adding in a fractional CFO as an offering for your clients is a way that you probably have changed to adapt and to provide an additional service that
like offer more value.
Yeah. So maybe that's something.
Yeah, because for us, it's we do the valuation, we see the issues, we say, okay, here's the things you need to fix, go fix them. We'll talk to you, in a couple of years and redo it. But that doesn't happen, right? So the thought was, how do we get into the weeds and help them fix the problem? Because clearly, if they're running with, bad AMS data or whatever it is, they don't know how to solve that problem. And so there were other, we had a list of 4 areas. One was like financials. One was production management, meaning that includes like producer relationships. It includes like looking at their book of business, and you see that it's spread across like 50 different carriers instead of like them teaching their sales team to try to hone it in. And so there was a number of them, like the what I call a bad business model, where they're just going after the wrong type of client. In the insurance industry, that might be like selling just auto insurance, and so you're buying auto insurance leads and you're selling them. And we've had agencies come to us that were like a couple million in revenue, and they had good revenue growth, but their profitability was terrible, and they didn't realize that they're on a flywheel where their cost of sales is like 70% of the revenue and the retention's like 60%. So you're constantly just churning.
Yeah.
They're thinking we're going to scale and we're going to get to profitability, but the reality is they're not going to get there because they're just churning customers and spending a lot of money to get new ones. And so business model was one of them, but we were looking at all these issues and saying, okay, how do we help, or who do we plug in to help them figure it out? And so there were different solutions we came up with, but the ones we could take in-house, we wanted to take in-house. The other ones, it was partnering with other firms like AMS vendors that specialize in that, or I've got some strategy consultants who are good at marketing and like helping agencies figure out what's their ideal customer, how do they go and find more of them, how do they cross-sell them, things like that. So it was really, yeah, we want to help, and then if we can't do it ourselves, who's the right resource, and then developing a relationship with firms that can help.
Do you have a success story that you can think of off the top of your head where it might have been a rehab project for you, where you started with an agency and engaged with them, and you maybe mapped out and said, hey, if you're looking to sell this in the next couple years, I would recommend doing this, this, and this, and ultimately saw it through, and then the sale, and it was just something that kind of lined up that really shine a light on what you guys deliver?
So we started this consulting service about a year and a half ago. We're working with one client who I've been working with for many years, but he plugged into our CFO service. They're probably going to go to market this year. They're pushing $9 million of revenue, but we've enhanced their margin. Probably, I don't want to say we have. Working with the client, they've enhanced their margin by like 5 to 10%.
Wow.
So that's on a $9 million revenue firm. That's a nice value lift.
Well, it's great on both ends, and it's great for them because they're going to have more offers, they're going to have better offers, and the final sale is going to be a better number, right?
Yeah.
And for you guys, it's better too because you've helped them get to this point, and that final sale number is going to be a larger sale number. So to me, I look at it like it's a win-win for you and the client.
Correct. Yeah.
That's awesome. All right. One thing we like to ask too is biggest struggle. And for your biggest struggle, you put focus and delegation. First, I want to just tackle why delegation. Why has delegation been a struggle for you?
Do you guys know the DISC personality type?
Yeah.
Okay. So I'm a DC, which means that defaults me to be a workaholic that tries to get everything perfect. And so
Yeah.
yeah. So
I can relate of sorts.
Yeah. So that's why. I mean, it's if a project comes in front of me that it requires me to dive into, and like doing a financial analysis or something like that, I'll usually just dive in and try to do it myself. So a personality flaw.
Well, I think you'll find this a lot with people that started a business. Like you started ABC, right?
Right.
I started my agency. There's a certain mindset you have. It's different if you get in and you just buy an agency and you start day one with 1,000 seated accounts, right? When you dig your business out of the ground and put your blood, sweat, and tears into your business, and you've become accustomed to delivering for your clients day in and day out a certain level of service, it's a little bit harder to delegate when you've gone through that gauntlet. Would you agree with that?
Yeah, it is. It's hard. But as an owner, it's hard to let go of certain things, but that's what you have to do if you're going to keep growing it.
I've made the example many times before of a pizza shop owner. Someone wants to start a pizza shop, and really what it comes down to, they have a checklist of things you have to do. Okay, get a space, need the ovens, need the ingredients, need a sign. What they really want to do is they just want to put their hands in the dough. They just want to put their hands in the dough, and they want to make pizza the way they've always imagined it to be. And then they start selling them. And then when they start selling these pizzas, the people eat it. They're like, this is like the best pizza I've ever had. So what goes through that person's mind is like, no one else can put their hands in the dough but me. And when you think that way, and again, lots of people, I've had this thought many times. I'm not the same on the disc chart as you, but when you only think about, I'm the only one who can make the pizza, there is a ceiling not only to your business, like how many pizzas you can make, so there's only so many hours in the day, but also you're probably going to get to a point of maybe being overworked or over leveraged, because you're just going to get to this spot where you're like, I'm not getting to where I want to go. So I want to go back to the delegation, knowing that that's a flaw of yours. What do you do, or what have you done to work with that flaw?
You're making this personal now. Let's see.
Yeah, let's go, Mike. Let's do it.
Tread lightly here.
So I mean, I've developed, so like, and this is all just reflected from the point of view of what a business owner has to do, because I know what I have to do and I'm working towards that. So you got to document processes for doing things, step one. Then you have to teach people how to do it. Then you have to give them authority to do it, right? And so those are the things I've been leaning in on the last couple of years, is making sure we document how things should be done, and then teaching, holding people accountable, but giving them the authority to go run with it and get it done. So that's what it's been a challenge for me for many years to like let go, but that's what I'm working on over the last couple of years and making progress towards. There's a book called The E-Myth that came out a long time ago.
Mm-hmm. Michael Gerber.
Yeah, and he talks about that, how so many business owners are really technicians at heart. They want to make the pizza.
Yeah.
Right. But you can't scale a business if you're making all the pizzas. And so there's kind of a transition or an evolution that has to occur. And he did a good job of going through that. I read that book a long time ago, but I wrote an article about it too for the insurance industry. It's like there's the technician, which is the owner that's an expert at like reading policies, understanding coverages and all that. And they're great at customer service. They're great at the technical details. But what we normally see is their agency hits like a revenue ceiling. And that's like, when I see that personality type, I know that's going to be the ceiling. Like maybe it's 500,000 in revenue, maybe it's 800, somewhere in there. And then the next type is what I call the rainmaker, which are the ones that love sales and they love networking and they're great at going out and bringing clients in, and they bring in a support team under them that's really servicing, but they're out there making it rain. And usually that business hits a ceiling at like maybe nowadays 2 million in revenue, something like that. Mm-hmm. And then there's one I call the serial entrepreneur. They're really good at building systems. And so they can, like let's say you build a personal lines agency and you have these marketing systems that are driving leads and you got the staff doing their job. But their struggle is they're not good at building a team, so it's a flat organization. And those ones hit a ceiling, maybe 2-3 million in revenue, something like that. And really the people that are able to keep scaling their business are the next one, which is kind of like the empire builder mindset, where they know at some point they got to level up, and they go from focusing on customers to focusing on systems to then internally focusing on developing their team, developing leaders and people within their team that then can lift them up even higher. And so I know that's the route that you have to go, and I'm working on it.
Love that. That's awesome.
Is it common when you lay it out like that? It seems to me like you kind of need a yin and a yang when it comes to business operations, business ownership, and that sort of thing. Is it common that you've seen it where maybe the person or the agency owner transitions from one role to another, or is it common where you see it where an agency owner knows their shortcomings or knows their strengths and brings in another partner to kind of balance out and give them something that they don't have within?
you're right. To keep scaling, you need partners that fill your partners, or it's harder to hire people and that are going to have
Right.
the ownership mentality to fill those gaps. But someone once told the guy that ran a 50 million revenue firm said, you got to have an inside guy and an outside guy. Like you've got to have two different personality types, one driving the revenue and one making sure, everything's working on the inside. And so, yeah, I think generally it's going to take more than one personality type to meet all those needs. But it is a struggle to hire to fill, you're better, like you have to, for anybody to take ownership, sometimes you got to have to give them equity or they have to be an owner.
Yeah.
So it's hard to sometimes hire somebody and that's going to be an employee to fill the needs that you have.
Totally agree.
Yeah.
And the quote that you gave us, super simple but very powerful. You reap what you sow. Why that quote?
Oh, I think it's applicable in so many ways. And so it's if you're in sales, you reap what you sow. You go out and throw a lot of seeds, plant seeds, and you'll reap a harvest. But it's also what are you prospecting? Because you're going to reap that harvest too if it's not a good prospecting. I said, I mentioned I'm somewhat philosophical, but it's true in life too. If you fill your mind with trash or you fill your mind with good thoughts, you're going to reap that. So I think it's very applicable across a lot of areas.
Fantastic conversation, Mike. So before we shut this one down, why don't you tell our listeners and watchers where they can learn more about you and everything you got going on?
Yep. Our website is agencybrokerage.com, easy to get to. And we've got content there. You can reach out to us. We also do, if you sign up on our newsletter, we do webinars every other month with some good content that it's worth tuning into.
Is there an ideal client that you work with time and time again that just seems to be a super good fit?
Like any professional, a client that appreciates what you tell them.
Yeah.
Sums it up.
Nice.
Love it.
All right. Well, that's all we have for this one, folks. Thank you for tuning in again to another episode of Bricks and Risk. See you next week. Thank you for joining us on another episode of Bricks and Risk. Our goal is that you walk away with one or two valuable nuggets, and we greatly appreciate you sharing your time with us today. You can find all BNR episodes on Spotify, Apple Music, YouTube, and anywhere else you get your podcast content. Until next time, keep learning and keep growing.